The time is now 1:30. It's Thursday, January 21st, and the regular meeting of the City Planning and Zoning Board will come to order. In preliminary matters, we'll ask for any additional agenda items or deletions from both staff and or members.
Mr. Chairman, the staff has no changes.
And board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval. Is there any? Okay. Approval of the minutes from the last two meetings, which were held in November and December.
I have a correction on...
on which one?
The first one, November 19th.
Okay.
It'll be on page number 2, the third full paragraph. 4 sentences down. He said the building was built in 1959 and consists of 74 acres. It should read 0.74 acres.
What's that correction?
Small problem.
They've gained a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Is there any additional corrections? Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the November 19th, 2015 meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have moved and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously. Now the regular meeting of December 3rd, 2015. Any additional changes to the minutes, corrections?
I have a question,
Question?
please, about the annual report. My report does not have an address for item number 1, the office building. Perhaps that report should, what's the location on the construction of the 1,400 square foot addition and the new 2,100 square foot building?
I have no idea.
Are you referring to the minutes?
I'm referring to the annual report that went to the City Council on our actions in the year 2015.
Tim, it's that first bulleted item.
Well, I don't have it in front of me. I won't know what it is. I'd have to go into our records. I mean, it wasn't picked up. I mean, that was just an oversight.
Well, could we just make it that there will be a correction made to
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I mean,
add the
I believe
address.
it's already been submitted to the council. So,
No,
I mean, or it hasn't?
It hasn't been submitted.
Oh, okay.
yet.
Well,
We're waiting till we receive all
we'll
of them.
clean that up. Yeah, I
That's
just don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other additions or deletions? With that in mind, with that correction, I'm looking for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in a second. Vote on it, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next item we have is a moment for public comment. And you're welcome to come up and speak to anything to the board here that you would like to. If it's going to be on something of the public hearing, which are quasi-judicial, we would appreciate you be sworn in before you make comments about those items, because under that situation, you're not permitted to speak on that until you have been sworn in, because it is quasi-judicial. So is there anybody who would like to speak in any other subjects? Please come to the podium and give us your name and your address. Seeing nobody coming forward, I will close the public hearing. Public comment, not the public hearing, right? We haven't had that yet. Okay, we'll open the public hearing now. And we have 2 items today. A being the conditional use and site plan application submitted by St. Francis Manor to construct 2 new housing buildings, 9-unit buildings on the northeast corner of the property, along with parking, drive aisles, and landscaping at 1750 20th Avenue. And the number on that one is SP15000015. And to follow that through, is there any disclosures by the Planning and Zoning Board members, ex parte communications?
I have none.
I have none.
Seeing, okay. Anybody who's going to say, we'd have swearing in of the applicants, staff, and witnesses collectively by the city clerk.
If you're going to testify, if you will please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
If there are any exhibits, please bring them forward. And And at this point in time, opening statements by staff, please.
This is a proposed conditional use application for congregate multiple family housing for the elderly, which has kitchen facilities in the RM13 zoning district. And they're proposing to build 2 buildings, 12,096 square feet, which will provide 18 additional living units. St. Francis Manor provides affordable housing for elderly residents in our county. There are currently 98 units on the site. They're proposing to add the additional 18, which will bring the total number to 116 units. And the site is located on 20th Avenue, which is a Indian County roadway, which is an urban collector. And surrounding the site, you have the Boys and Girls Club to the east, baseball field to the south. There's single-family, multifamily, vacant land, and there's also one office building on the north of the site. This property is designated residential high in the comprehensive land use plan, and the zoning is RM13. The project meets the definition of both a major and a conditional site plan, which requires the Planning and Zoning Board to approve it. On July 21st, 2015, they conducted a neighborhood meeting. The meeting was attended by those involved with the project, along with 3 residents. There were no opposition to the proposed project was voiced. And in looking at the site plan evaluation, you have to look at section 64.10, which requires that all approved site plans have to meet certain general review, performance, and development standards. We've reviewed those, and we find that they meet all of these standards. The 2 most pertinent are the section 6410A, which the site plan was reviewed by all of the pertinent departments, and we have attachment A attached to the review to show how the project meets the requirements of the codes, and we find that it is compliant with all of the land development regulations. And then also section 6410B of the design and layouts of the driveway and parking creates no safety hazards and will not have an adverse impact on the adjacent properties. And we find that it is compliant with that requirement. And then in order to grant the conditional use, the Planning and Zoning Board needs to find that it is designed to meet public health, safety, and welfare. And you have to look at conditional uses on a case-by-case basis. And what you want to look at is neighborhood stability, that it's not going to have an adverse impact on surrounding properties, including noise, traffic, scale of the proposed property. And additionally, with this particular use, there were extra requirements, section 61.76(3), with the required landscaping adjacent to the single-family uses, which the only place that came into play is if you look at the site plan on the northern portion of the site along 18th Street. There is landscape, 20-foot wide landscape strip along the parking area, and they also have the 6-foot high hedge material that is provided, that's required for a conditional use there. And the staff finds that the proposed use will not have any adverse effect on adjacent properties. The site has been designed to provide the required landscaping, stormwater retention, mechanical equipment. Dumpsters are located so they're not facing the single-family residential property. And we find that it is compliant with all the requirements of Section 61.76. And staff recommends approval of the site plan and conditional use subject to the conditions listed in the memo. And I would like to add one additional one that was inadvertently left off, which is the tree mitigation from tree removal, TR 15-000-113 shall be installed and inspected prior to CO, which is our
That's in your,
typical.
that's noted, that'll be in the conditional
Yes,
approval.
please.
Okay. All right. So you're going to call any additional witnesses?
Oh, the applicant is here if they'd like to.
I'll sit next separate. Okay. Does anybody have questions right now of?
Well, I do.
Okay.
I do. Regarding the location of the dumpsters, not to be located on the side of a building which faces residential property. On the site plan, very clearly, you do have two existing dumpster enclosures facing, I'm looking like an existing ditch there, and then on the other side is single-family residential.
If that was an. Okay, that was previously approved. This site originated in 1974, so the conditions, requirements were no doubt different back then. So that's an existing,
Okay,
and that
and
wasn't part of the review process.
Can I ask a question regarding, honey? The existing condition, even though it's in the proposed site adjustment, okay, or expansion, those do not have to meet with our, they can, because they're existing, they can remain? We're asking for conditional here.
I would. I think you have full authority if you want to require some more screening or something else. But I think I would ask the applicant to come forward to discuss that with you.
And I think when we get, if there's people living in those residential, I think their input will be important to us at that point also.
I had difficulty seeing where the proposed building would have their dumpsters, and so that's why I brought this up. Would they be using the existing dumpsters that are there?
That's my understanding, that they're utilizing what's existing.
Okay. Okay.
Any additional questions right now?
I have one, Tim, in the recommendations, the number 2, where the site is subject to random inspections by Public Works. Can anyone call Public Works and ask for a random inspection on that, or is that just
if it's
suggested by?
It suggests if it's a complaint. This is under our erosion sediment control provision, so allows them. So they'll routinely go on sites if they have to. Certainly, if somebody sees something, for instance, if there's it looks like landscape debris going out from a wash because there wasn't a proper siltation fence or erosion control, you can make a phone call on a code complaint and they would go out. Okay. And we've routinely done that on many projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Many big projects we've done that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any history of any complaints about this property here, which has been in this kind of use for a long time?
I've been here 16 years, and I don't ever recall having a complaint against this property. And during the time that the property has been posted and the agenda was advertised, I had not one call.
Okay.
So they're proven to be good neighbors.
I would imagine there's not a lot of noise.
A lot of partying, but
Well,
Happy
the older you get,
people.
the more parties. That's what you're
that's
saying, man?
right. More partying time. Additional questions?
Not for me.
Ken, go ahead.
When Mr. McGarry is finished, I have a question.
There's supposed to be an enclosure there.
There is.
Then what are we talking about? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had a question. Along 20th Avenue, there's a little bridge that goes over the canal that's been closed off. It was my understanding that that little area is an entry into a driveway into the project. That little bridge, is it under control of the St. Francis Manor people? Are they going to be using that to access the property, since they're doing additional
You mean
units?
the bridge over 20th Avenue?
Right. Well, my first question is it under their control? Is it like a
Well,
driveway?
no, that would be the Indian River Farms owns the 20th, that ditch that goes in 20th Avenue. That's under the farm's control, so they have full authority over it. Now, we've probably put the bridge in, but we'd have to get gotten a permit, so.
All right. And I was curious because it was shut down, and I was told that St. Francis, that's theirs, the little road.
I'm not aware of that. That would be unusual.
Is
But they can't be
is it on the
their road.
property site or is it off property site?
No, it's off property. They
site.
couldn't own the road anyway because it's in the Indian River Farms district.
The reason I brought that up is I was curious because it's been closed off for quite a while, and this is before it came to the hearing. I had asked, who owns the road, and it was explained to me it was an access point for St. Francis Manor, and it was under their control. So if they're here, I'm just curious if they're going to use it or if it's going to stay closed. Because the other thing too is it may not have anything to do with this hearing, but it's got holes in the road right now when you go over it, and there's been kids playing around it. So I'm just trying to figure out who.
It's probably why they're just closed.
Well, you can.
No, I'm just saying.
Right. The traffic can't get through there. They have these little barriers up, but it doesn't prohibit the kids from riding their bikes and playing in the holes. So I'm just curious if the applicant comes up, I'd like to ask that question, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Additional questions right now?
Fine.
Would the applicant like to come forward? You have been sworn in, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Would you give us your name and your affiliation?
Good afternoon. My name is John Blum. I'm one of the principal owners of Carter Associates, and we are the engineers for the applicant, St. Francis. Also with me is Linda Scott. She's the executive director. Based on the first question about the dumpster enclosure, Gail and Tim are correct. That is an existing dumpster, and that will be utilized by the residents of the new buildings. There are no proposed dumpsters associated with the two new buildings. So it's part of the original phase. It's not included in this new portion of development.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay.
I apologize, Mr.
No, you go ahead.
The code, it says we're practical to do it. It was existing, but I believe they do have to screen it, which it does have an enclosure,
Yes,
correct?
yes, it
So
does.
I just wanted to add that so you're aware of that.
Okay.
But it does come under the preview of this.
I would say you have some
Because-
room because it says whenever practical. So that's why you need to talk to an applicant.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you there is a deep canal that separates the single family,
I understand
and
that.
it's heavily vegetated at that location
understand
too.
that.
So
And Waste Control can access
yes,
the
yeah,
dumpsters
they've
there.
always
probably the
utilized it.
critical
And we're actually improving it by putting the connection out to 18th Street, a paved connection, so that can be utilized as well.
Good. Thank you.
May I just ask a couple informative questions? The individual, there's, I think, 18 units, is that right?
Yes, 18
And of
proposed.
those, what size are those units inside?
Do you know? I'm not
footage?
sure. The footprint of the building is the same as the existing ones, but those all contain 12 units. So these are going to be a little bit larger units because they're only 9, and they're mainly geared towards couples.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I don't have the
Do
exact
they
square
have
footage.
individual kitchens in them or not?
They do,
They do.
yes.
Okay, so they're a self-contained unit within
Correct.
the facility?
Correct.
Are all the units in the facility self-contained, or
Yes,
they all
yes,
do
it's
have?
all independent living, correct.
Okay. That was just for edification.
Sure. And then I'll try to answer Mr. Dagg's question. From what I know, that's a county-owned bridge. It is over Indian River Farms ditch, and there was a failure in the bridge that was brought to their attention. That's why it's closed off. I don't know why they haven't attempted to fix it. I know they're doing work along 20th Avenue, so I don't know if it's ultimately a part of that plan. But it is not owned or maintained by St. Francis.
And I appreciate you answering that because you are an engineer, and which has nothing to do with this hearing. I just needed that on there because we've been playing, I guess, bat the ball back and forth.
Sure.
That St. Francis Manor owns it, but it has nothing to do with your project.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I know there's signage on it, and I don't know the history behind that, if that was something that was granted in some type of right-of-way permit, but it is done.
I'm fine with, you're the engineer. It has nothing, that
Right.
road there and bridge has nothing to do with St. Francis County. Thanks.
Additional questions of the applicant?
Each of these buildings will be about 6,000 square feet in a single-story building?
Yes, single story.
Okay, so we can calculate the square footage for each unit just by dividing that and adding 10%.
Yeah, there's
Or
a
take 10%.
central laundry room in
Okay.
there too, and corridors.
So what percentage of the 6,000 is going to be resident space?
I would say 90%.
90%, that's what I figure about, yeah. Fine. Thank you.
All right, down the end?
Yep, doing good.
All right.
Well aware of the facility.
Okay. Additional questions of the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
I would now like to ask if there's anybody here that would like to come up and speak for the public in reference to this particular item. If you would, please come forward to the podium and be heard. Seeing nobody coming forward, I will now close that. Are there any closing arguments by the applicant? Are there any closing arguments by the staff? Well, there'll be no rebuttal then. Planning and Zoning Board, it's up to us. I have a couple questions that I'm going to pose now, if I may. There was a public meeting for this, and are anybody here neighbors that has any problem with the dumpster issue? And I don't. If you would have come forward if you did. So I don't believe that's relevant, then, in my opinion, because I didn't see any of them participating in that. And I know a little bit about the background of this facility and everything that I've heard about it in my time here in the city of Vero, which has been very positive for our community and very helpful. And therefore, I would like to encourage us to approve this application. And I think on its own merits, it deserves that.
I do have one
Go ahead.
little question. On the landscape specifications, the maximum number of trees replaced by palms require 7, but you're only proposing 5.
They're allowed 7.
Allowed, not required.
Right, yeah.
Says required.
And they did not submit a landscaping plan that I saw, but I think it's because it's so minor in nature.
Well, no, we have a landscaping plan. We just
Wasn't in our packet.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I assume the site already meets the landscaping requirements for the facility?
And then with the additional landscaping for the conditional use, they are over and above what they need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Is there additional questions?
I encourage that certainly this community can use some lower income housing for our population, especially the elderly population. So I think this is a very positive thing for our community, and I fully support it.
And it's well kept, and it's a positive influence, and that's wonderful. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. I move we accept the recommendations with the addition of the item 11, which is for the which is mentioned by Gail.
Tree mitigation.
Tree mitigation.
Okay. I have
Item
do I have
10.
Item 10, yes.
Item 10.
I said 11. Did you add another one?
No. I'm sorry. I had moved it already, and I forgot the number.
Okay.
I added number 10. Yeah.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a
Right.
second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote from our.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillman?
Yes.
Mr. Coteau?
Yes.
Mrs. Manous?
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer?
Yes.
Passes
Thank
5
you.
to 0.
We wish you a lot of success
Yeah.
with it.
Good luck on the funding. I hope you get it.
Yeah.
How's it going? Okay. Good.
The second item on the agenda today is another quasi-judicial, and this one is for conditional use and site plan application submitted by Christ by the Sea United Methodist Church, Inc., for a change of use from single-family residential to church administrative offices and provide landscaping to meet conditional use criteria at 615 Gray Twig Road, and the number on this particular item is SP 15000018. And with that in mind, disclosure, by the Planning and Zoning Boards for any ex parte communications?
I have none.
None.
And I do know several principals at that church. I will note that, and that's just all I can say on that one. And now we'll take the swearing in of the applicant.
You want us to swear in again? Be okay?
Peggy, they don't need to be sworn in again if they've already been sworn in. No, they have more.
That's all right. Yeah.
Stand up and be sworn in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
If there's any exhibits or anything, please bring them forward. Staff will make it. You're going to make the presentation, Gil?
I am. This will be a lot of the same from the last, with it being a conditional use. The site is designated residential low in the comprehensive land use. It's R1A zoning, and a place of worship is a conditional use in the R1A zoning district. And the site is located at 615 Great Twig Road, and they are proposing to change a residential structure into a church administrative office. And the existing place of worship is south of this property. To the east of this property, there is an existing parking lot for the church, and to the north and the west of the site, there are single-family homes. And the site does meet the definition of a major and a conditional use, which requires Planning and Zoning Board approval. There was a neighborhood meeting October 22nd, 2015. There were people that were involved with the project there, along with 7 residents. The primary questions pertained to the landscaping, and again, there was no opposition to the proposed project voiced at that meeting. And Section 64.10 requires that all approved site plans meet certain general review, performance, and development standards. And the 2 most relevant to this project are the compliance with the land development regulations, Section 64.10A6, and the site plan was reviewed by all of the relevant departments, and we find that it is compliant with the provisions of the land development regulations. There was just to make a note, there was a landscape buffer easement recorded with the property to the west of 5 feet to provide the required 20-foot wide landscape buffer for conditional use. And we do have attachment A attached to this, which shows how the project met all of the requirements. With the site design performance standards, there is a proposed handicap parking space at this proposed office, which will create no safety hazards and not have a negative impact on adjacent properties. And we find that the site plan is compliant with the performance standards of 6410B. And in order to grant a conditional use approval, the applicant must satisfy sections 61.04 and 61.05B, and that is where this Planning and Zoning Board has to make sure that it doesn't create a problem with health, safety, and welfare. And the conditional uses are supposed to be considered on a case-by-case basis. And neighborhood stability and impact on abutting properties shall be of prime importance in considering conditional uses. And we have reviewed, and we find that it is compliant with section 61.04, as the proposed church administrative office will not have a negative impact on the neighborhood stability or abutting properties. The church has been there for a number of years, and the parking lot has been there for a number of years also. And looking at section 61.05, which has to do particularly with the place of worship, it does have that requirement with the landscape, which I told you they did get the landscape easement with the next door property, but we find that it does meet the requirements of section 61.05. And staff is recommending approval of the site plan and the conditional use with the comments listed in the memo. And we will add another one onto this one also, which is that the landscape easement needs to be recorded in the county records and a copy provided to the city within 30 days.
Can I, Gail, before we begin, do we have anything so the public can see the site plan in case they have interest, because it's not up there presently? Thank you. In this case, you're not going to call. Are you going to call any witnesses or anything?
No, the applicant is here, though.
All right.
So,
questions of staff?
Yeah, I do. On this 20-foot buffer, 5 feet exists already. It's recorded with the property that's west of this site. Is that property responsible for maintaining it as a buffer?
They have there's a easement on it. They're not supposed to interfere with the landscaping of that, but basically if that should fall out of, if the buffer should not be maintained as a buffer, we would come after the church. And that's why we've tied this all together. Rather than going through a separate site plan thing, the church would be held responsible to make sure
And is that going
and they
to
have an easement.
Is that going to be written as a responsibility then?
Well, it's Bruce can answer that.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Latoni is our neighbor, and he's been very cooperative. We wrote the easement document. It makes the church responsible for the landscaping and the maintenance of the easement.
Yeah. Bruce, if you'll, I'd like to let us finish the questions here, and then we'll introduce yourself in a minute.
Okay.
Just hold still. You're good. Just wait.
Well, I think he answered that question.
I know he was
better than I did.
I know. You invited him up, so go ahead.
And I needed an answer. Okay, and then, just following that up, as far as the recommendations that you're making, under number 5, there's a unity of title that should be obtained, and I'm just wondering how that all impacts, the 20-foot buffer, the administrative property, and the parking lot.
That doesn't affect it. It just ties the whole property together. We've been doing that because a lot of properties, technically when you have parcel by parcel, you have zoning regulations and you have setbacks. Well, this ties it all together, even though a site plan does it. If you notice, we've been doing this more often now to clean up particularly commercial properties.
Sure. Well,
so they aren't sold off or something to create a problem.
My question then goes, if it's unity of title, suppose they wanted to change the parking lot to another use. Does that require they come back, or?
Well, it's all under one site plan, so they would have to come back anyway. But the unity of title is just that it puts all the parcels together under one owner. Actually, one parcel.
Okay.
Does this become an integral part of the total site plan then?
Yes,
it's
and it was anyway, but this
it's not
cleans
separate
it up.
And distinct.
Yes. So, and as I said, we've been doing this periodically, if you recall, and just to clean that up. Yeah.
Okay.
And can they modify the structure under this approval? If it's approved, can they modify the structure, or do they have to come back? Is that a right they receive under this? If they want to put a second story on it, for example?
They would have to come back, a second story on that. If it reaches the threshold, they may have to come back to you, depending on how many square feet. Yes.
But they could modify the exterior of the unit, and it would just be like anybody else doing that?
It would just be like anybody else.
Because they have an approval on the project.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, you're not approving it. They have to keep it as looking as a single-family house.
That was the basis of where I was
right.
getting to. Okay. Additional questions of staff? All right. Seeing none, we'll ask the applicant to come forward now. You have to get up and introduce yourself because you didn't last time, okay? Some of these attorneys, they're just tough.
I don't have anything else to add. My name is Bruce Barquette. If you have any questions, other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. That's all I got.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Barquette?
Don't feel obligated.
All I have one question, and of course, having experience with this,
Gee.
does the church have any intention of purchasing any other homes to make another parking lot?
Man, I'm just a lawyer. I don't know, and I don't
Okay.
think we've got the church vestry here that could answer that question. So
Okay.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
And
The reason why I asked that is because one of the homeowners that was present, Mr. Paxton, asked the same question. And a church member said that they have no interest in becoming a mega church, but once again, I've heard that. So that would be a main concern in that neighborhood, would be to purchase more homes and just extend the parking lot and then go from that to extend the girth of the church itself. So,
I don't have any information to
okay.
offer.
Thank you.
Additional questions of Mr. Barquette before he leaves the podium? Then thank you, Mr. Barquette.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
We found out who he is.
We found out who he is, at least. We
Absolutely.
didn't know. So did the public. Is there anybody from the public who would like now come forward and speak? Were you sworn in? You were?
No,
Then you need to be sworn in if you're going to come forward
If you'll,
to the podium.
if you'll raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please give us your name.
Duncan Clements at 640 Fiddlewood Road.
Okay.
And I'd just like to say that from a planning perspective, I think it's detrimental to the community to take out a residential house and putting a footprint, as Ms. Hillman has already said, we don't know how that goes in the future. This is a primary residential community. There are businesses on the ocean, on the lagoon side and on the ocean side, but this is primarily a residential area. And from a planning perspective, to suddenly put in a business amongst all homes, there's already a church there, which is obviously very acceptable, but to go any further and to take out residential homes from a planning perspective. And I think generally too, there's a concern from some of the homeowners about the price of their value of their home. Obviously, on resale, if you have offices within the community, it doesn't look so nicer. And that's what I would say.
Can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Do you live adjacent to or nearby the?
I live opposite the church on the Fiddlewood side.
On the Fiddlewood side, okay.
Yeah, the church actually, and I have no qualm with the church at all. The church is fine. We're good neighbours, but I feel that giving up more land on the other side, which takes out a residential home that could house a family, and that family could be in the community and use the schools and all that sort of stuff for an office. I don't see the reason why they can't use the house as it is as an office, and then at the time when they don't want it, it can be reverted to a house and sold as a house.
I think that's a good question to be asked, and I think they have an answer for that. And can I let Bruce? Is it all right by the board to let Bruce respond to that question? Mm-hmm. Bruce, do you mind coming back up? You can stay up there, sir.
The house isn't going to be demolished or reconstructed or anything. They're just going to do some interior renovations, right? I mean, the house is going to remain a house. It's just going to be used for administrative offices for the church.
Well, that's good to hear. But in principle, I believe that it's not a good move to start to intermingle, should I say, businesses in a predominantly residential area. Keep the businesses where they're designed to be on the periphery, and leave the housing where it is.
Can I ask you this? Do you feel that the church is a detriment to property values? And if so, if you do feel that way, what do you think causes that?
I think in the current state of it, the way it is, no, it's not a detriment. But like anything, if things grow and creep, yes, it becomes a detriment because, yeah.
In what way?
in that you're turning a residential area into a business area, into an organizational area, however you define the church.
Additional questions?
I don't really have a question as much as a comment. At the neighborhood meeting, we didn't notice that there was any opposition and that the focus seemed to be mostly on landscape buffering from the community. What is your opinion? Will that help you as far as, your concerns with adequate buffering landscape?
I'm sure the landscaping will be fine. Yeah, I'm sure it will look fine. It's just the principle of the fact that you're taking away a residential house that garners residential.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful too. I don't think the church owns the house, and under the uses, they're allowed to do what they're doing. Correct, Ms. McGarry? They can change it to an administrative office.
Yes, I mean, it's part of the church. Churches are allowed by conditional use. I mean, they're allowed in every residential district as a conditional use, I believe. And so, I mean, the question whether the expansion of the church, those are important things. I mean, and that would have to come back before the Planning and Zoning Board.
If the church,
and Ms. Silliman's already pointed out, we've had some much bigger situations going on in other localities rather than one house that's being converted here. We don't see that as an issue.
If the church came in and wanted to buy the next 3 homes to expand the church, we would be under a different criteria than they're coming forward to us today. Today, they own the property, and it's what they're going to use the property for. And then I'll stand corrected. The uses they're applying for are acceptable with the present zoning, except they have to have consideration of certain extra criteria. Is that right?
That's correct. As a conditional use, they have certain criteria they must meet.
So they are within, if they meet those criteria, pretty much some parameters that we have to accept.
I think one thing that would be helpful, if you look at the backup material, since this is a hearing, when they had the neighborhood meeting, when you go to G, George Paxton asked a question, and it says right there, the church members explained it was not the intention to become a mega church, and that may be helpful in the future if the church folk decide to buy more homes. You can remember this, that's there. I understand your concerns. We've had situations, not in your area, but in other areas, where the churches can go get larger and larger by buying up properties, and right now there's no rules against that.
There's still no rule against buying the properties. There is getting it transformed into the zoning that they would like to have.
For sure.
For sure.
For sure, because we all know as well that once the zoning changed, we lose the taxable base too.
True.
But that's another argument.
Thank you very much. Additional questions? Thank you very much. Sir, do you wish to come forward? Please state your name, and have you been sworn in? Okay.
Kim Pickering.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And can you repeat your name, please?
Kim Pickering.
Thank you.
I live at 612 Holly Road, which is catty corner and to the north of the church property. And I apologize because I wasn't in town for the meeting. And I really haven't done my homework on this, but I decided to come to the meeting because there are 6 large oaks on the property, and I don't really know what's happening to the trees. They're remaining. Yep. And as far as the parking, are you going to be putting parking in the rear of the house? Okay. So it's basically just a footprint improvement. Is it single family or single story or?
If you're going to answer him, I'll need, yes, please.
Okay. There's the elevation. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. I've lived at my residence for 25 years. The church has been a great neighbor. They had a preschool at one time, got a little noisy, but that was okay. And I'm all for the project, so long as the trees remain. Thank
Kim?
you.
Yeah, the only thing I see on the exterior, other than the additional landscaping, is a handicap, turning a driveway parking space into a handicap parking space. From that, that's all I ascertained from that is changed, or if anything, the landscaping is enhanced over what we have right now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If I'm incorrect, I need to correct it on that statement. Okay, and that's what I perceive right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, like I said, they've been good neighbors.
Thank you very much.
My reading of it was that the parking would be on the existing parking, which is to the east of this property, and there'd be some sort of a path or something that they would establish between the access to this building and the existing parking.
Right, the parking is based on the seats in the sanctuary, so there's not going to be additional parking required.
Right. And they have adequate parking at present.
If I went there today, would they be? What is it used for today?
The house?
The house.
I think it's vacant now.
Is it vacant right now? So you haven't used it administratively at all yet? It's just incidental storage or something?
Well,
like
it's
that?
going to need, since it's a change of occupancy under the building code, it'll have to go through that.
Okay.
That's one reason you see the handicap parking there.
They'll have that maybe exit signs or something like that,
They're gonna
whatever
have
it
to
comes
meet
up with.
the
whatever
building code
requires.
changes.
And they'll be presenting building permits for any kind of renovation work they're going to do and changing all the stuff they normally have to do. Yeah.
There's no plan on changing the zoning there?
There's not a need to. It's a
Thank you.
conditional use
It
in the
complies,
R1A
right?
zoning.
It's compliant.
Now, this is across the street from the church, so anybody going back and forth between the church and the administration building would be walking across the street?
There's a parking lot immediately east of this residence.
Oh, yeah. So
They
we're
park
not
in the
talking about foot traffic or anything really going back and
I
forth?
believe they would be able to park in the parking lot east of this residence if they want to go to the office.
Right now, the church staff is parking in this parking lot and walking across the street to get to the church. It would,
It's
it
a
would be
residential
reducing the
street.
traffic, as far as I can see, crossing the street.
There isn't a real issue.
It's
Right,
a
I know that.
residential street. Additional questions, either staff or the applicant? Should I calling, does anybody wish to pose a question?
I'm ready to make a motion.
May need a motion then?
Well, you still have the public hearing open?
Didn't I open the public?
You do have it open.
I need to close the public hearing.
If there's no one else that wishes to speak.
Anybody else wish to come forward? Seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing. Forgive me. And I'll keep me going. Keep me going. Any closing arguments by the staff?
I just wanted to make sure that it's understood that this is not a business office. This is an administrative office for the church, which is a permitted conditional use in the R1A zoning district.
Okay. And by the applicant, anything else you'd like to say, Bruce? Sir, okay. Planning and zoning board? Discussion?
No.
Are we ready to make a motion?
I'd like to make the motion that we accept the staff recommendations with the additional comment number 6 for the landscape easement to be recorded.
Do I have a second?
Second?
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call the question.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillman?
Yes.
Mr. Croteau?
Yes.
Mrs. Benuz?
Yes.
Mr. Laufer?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Wish you a lot of luck with it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will now move to planning department matters. Tim, any planning department matters?
The only thing, apparently, we don't have any items for the next agenda, so we'll probably cancel that meeting, most likely. And I'm telling you, I'm working steadily on the comp plan, so I'm hoping we can start some workshops starting in March. So don't hold me to it, but I'm doing the best we can. It's a lot of work involved with this. So
It's done before summer, so I'll be here.
oh no, we got to get it done. Yeah,
When are we supposed to submit that?
it was 2nd of February.
Okay.
We're going to be late. I mean, I've already acknowledged that. So the other thing is, if you all been keeping up on the Cultural Arts Village, I've been attending their meetings and providing input. They basically, I have a copy of the plan. I don't know if they put it on there. We might put it on our website that you can get. I have a copy, but basically it's a fairly decent plan. I think it was good, the participation, all that, came some recommendations. Obviously, it's the details, meaning how you implement it's going to be the real issue, and because there's dollar signs behind everything. But the one thing that did come out, they're looking at doing an overlay zone in the district. And I've already explained to them, but it wasn't really clear in the presentation by the executive director of the Cultural Council. She seems to think the overlay district will be done in March. No, they're going to submit the draft document to the council in March, and I don't think there's an issue there if you looked at it. I want to make sure you all have a copy. You can look at it. And I told them I will incorporate elements in the comp plan, but there's a lot of work before you do an overlay district. And one of the problems they can't do it without comp plan changes, just because the future land use map has to be changed. There's no way, again, and I've notified them. So when you hear that, it's going to take a while to go through this process, but I just wanted to keep you up to date.
Would this be similar to what we did on Beachside?
Yes, it'll be a different kind of thing because there are different districts involved. And there's some issues I have with where they want to be in the downtown district. I'm not certain that works with the small scale of the arts village they're looking for. And definitely our downtown zoning district is very liberal. I mean, and they're talking about limiting to 2 stories. And well, downtown zoning, you can do 5 stories pretty easily if you're good at it. So there are certain things that need to be thrashed out.
Is this purely legislative now that?
Yeah, it's
so
still.
We're not limited in any kind of quasi situation talking to anybody.
Anything they do now is strictly legislative. Now, and in fact, even the overlay zone is going to be that way. I mean, it's basically policy decisions that are being made.
What is the objective? What are they trying to accomplish? What's the overall? I somewhat don't know all. Well, I can see the generality.
They're trying to create a small location that would attract artists and the people who want to live and work there, with small cafes.
It really is interesting.
Retaining the small scale nature of it there, and allowing certain housing that would allow you to work there as well as do your arts, crafts, all sorts of media thing, and looking at streetscape improvements and all that. As I said, those are dollar signs for a lot of that. And so, I mean, I think the idea is good, and the question is where they wanted to have the district, and they've kind of got a broad thing. I had a little qualms about, as I said, expanding it into the downtown district, but they can be probably overcome looking at how the overlay is done. But I think it's a great idea. It's just it'll be interesting to see the support once it gets down to moving forward. But there's some real interest in it, and a lot of good people that I know on that leadership group.
I know someone. Yeah, I know someone quite well. So
yes,
I have some idea what the real issue is here. What they're trying to do is to create an area where the small housing will remain, but an artist could be able to have their studio, live there, and also have retail, able to sell retail space. So you'd be combining, both all in one thing. So an artist right now has to pay 40% to a gallery owner in order to sell their art. So it's an advantage to an artist to be able to do that. In this area, there is the main streets either side, but there's an alley going in between the streets. So you would have a nice pedestrian space, and they could develop the property to go along those lines. So that's what they're trying to do, is create a little village where artists can thrive in. And not look to be big, not a big commercial development thing. I mean, keep it small, keep it under that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that retail aspect, because that's important.
That to me is the primary driver.
That's a key. Yeah, it's a key component.
And my understanding, and one of the things about when you do these kinds of things, you have a long lead time, and you're creating a zoning change. People are already buying property in there.
That's right.
People are already buying property in there in anticipation of being able to do these things, and they want to get in there before the owners know that this is happening, before the values go. But that's our country. That's the way the process works. So the more we talk about it, the more it's going to drive interest.
What does the geographic overlay of that look like? I mean, how many blocks are we talking about?
Well, it goes from on the east side of 20th of 19th Place on the north down to 18th Street, I believe, and then up with a freshman learning center around that over to 14th Avenue in that area. So that's the basic.
The old Edgewood, right?
Yes, it's the old Edgewood
Yeah.
community.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, that's it.
I think it's a wonderful idea. I hope.
Now, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council did that planning on it. Has that
Yes, they
all
did.
been finalized now? Is that what they were referring to?
Well, they're in the second draft, and there were comments made on the draft. But I was at the last meeting, and my comment was I asked the Dana Little, who's from the Treasure Coast, the planner, and they're about 85% done. They're going to do some more changes. But what I looked at, I think, as I told them, I don't think it had a real problem from our staff or the city, approving what they had. Mm-hmm. But again, it is like the vision plan. It's a document adopted by somebody, but it doesn't have any legal basis, and that's why I keep harping on the comp plan to everybody that want to listen. That's where the real teeth comes in on anything we do, and until we do this that's why I want to incorporate some of this into the comp plan.
Are they working on kind of like an overlay right now?
Well, I don't know if when I talked at the meeting, and Ken, you were there, so when I talked at the meeting, it sounded like that wasn't part of their work scope, but they were willing to give me data and stuff to help. So they're giving me enough what they want to do in there. So I have some idea. I've seen some other overlays to do done that. I mean, I've done enough overlays now. I figure I can work it in. So, and I think they agreed, but I don't know if that's really part of what they've in their contract. So it sounds like they're going to finish this report up, but they may be available to help on a few other things, which I don't have a problem with. Is they brought up a few things, but I haven't seen it in writing on some of the details. Okay, I hope that answers.
Well, I think there's a lot of community interest behind that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had one of the Oceanside business area. I can see some of the overlay districts starting to take effect there now with some of the planters and things they're putting out, trying to upscale over there, and it's slow. The money is the shortest suit they have, but other than that, they're putting planters out and things. They're actually copying some of the downtown ideas and facilitating over on the island, and I think it's positive, and you can see it. It's subtle yet, but I was talking to one of the gentlemen over there, and he indicated to me that they're starting to design signage they'd like to coordinate and this and that and all those things that I think that's all going to make our beachside downtown even more superior than it is right now.
I've been a little disappointed. We haven't had really redevelopment under the overlay, but I have had a couple recent conversations of interest in doing just that.
Yes,
so
a couple of little things have been implemented, but they're now seeing that they have to keep up with. The downtown's looking pretty darn good, by the way, so you have to keep up with even the Joneses in your own neighborhood. But further south, they can go a little ways to be the best and remain the best.
I just have one question. Tim, how far, if any, have we gotten with the Lantana property? The motel or duplexes that came in front of us?
Rachel Tilton's project.
Yeah.
I apologize. No, you may not have been at the meeting. That project, based on your vote and based on what the testimony at that meeting, I had a word with them that I told them, look, you really don't, I don't think, have a prayer in front of the city council, and or you will have my support. But we will work out a compliance agreement with you to give you additional time, because nobody really had an issue with her development.
Right.
And so we felt that there could either this court case is going to be resolved, or we would come back and look at some other kind of less intrusive type zoning aspect with that would not scare the bejesus out of the neighborhood. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So that's what we've arrived at. So she's got another year. That's what we agreed. They agreed to withdraw their application, and that's how we handled that.
All right.
So, yeah, I brought that up. You must not have been there at the...
I think I was at the meeting, but I wasn't sure if how much time we were getting or giving them to come into compliance.
Yeah, I gave them a year.
A year.
And it basically would be the court case, or we'll work on maybe some zoning changes. I didn't guarantee anything because, So
as far as code goes, are they still renting it on a 2-week basis? Or?
Yes, they're still those compliance agreements allow them to continue in their in their situation. But again, as I said, based on the testimony at the hearing, nobody that I heard got up there and said, we don't hate that use there. Their biggest concern was the future and what could happen if they rezoned it. So that's why we didn't have a problem, and I got authorization from my boss to go ahead with that compliance agreement.
Okay. So they have one year to come into.
And also, if I can mention, the state legislature is in session early this year, and there are already 3 vacation rental bills, similar to the ones that we saw last year. Some go a little bit farther. So there's also that component. What's going to happen this year at the state legislature?
Keep us updated.
We're not safe if they're in session, that's for sure.
And no idea when this court case is going to be heard. Any information at all?
On another subject, Tim, last year we approved a development on the island next to the 7-Eleven, and nothing's happened there. I was wondering what the status of that is. Have they been applied for any building permits?
That has gone. They renewed it and it's died again. Whatever happened?
Okay.
I think I had to tell. Yeah, it's right where the old Charlie's was.
Right, where Charlie's was.
Yeah,
It's all. It's been.
Yeah. It's kind of gone.
It's
I
gone.
mean, and I believe I'd have to check. I believe even the extension now is gone. Last I asked, it was one of those things that they had a bunch of. I believe investors, and they all kind of pulled out for whatever the reasons
So at
were.
some point in the future, we may get a different kind of proposal for that property.
Very likely, especially if it's died, they would have to come back anyway. You know.
Board member matters? That was really planning department matters. Board member matters?
I think they've all been satisfied. Thank you.
With anything else, we're ready to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.